They laughed at it. When the First Republic P-47 Thunderbolts rolled onto European airfields, German pilots couldn't help but chuckle. "Too big," they said, "too heavy. That thing will never win a dogfight." To them, it looked more like a flying beer barrel than a fighter plane, a lumbering beast that had no place in a sky dominated by sleek Bf-109s and FW-190s, but what they didn't know was that the same ugly machine they mocked would soon be diving out of the clouds, guns blazing, turning their laughter into fear. This is the story of the warplane the Germans laughed at, and how that joke ended up haunting them. When the P-47 made its debut in early 1943, even Allied pilots raised eyebrows. It was massive, the heaviest single-engine fighter of World War II. Standing next to it, a Spitfire looked like a sports car beside a tank. The Thunderbolt's nose was dominated by a huge 18-cylinder radial engine, the Pratt Whitney R2800. Add the turbo supercharger system behind the cockpit, and the aircraft ballooned in size. British pilots joked it looked like a flying bathtub. German intelligence reports described it as too heavy for high-G maneuvers. Two Luftwaffe aces used two agile machines, it seemed ridiculous. A plane that big couldn't possibly outturn or outclimb a Messerschmitt. And so, when the first Thunderbolts showed up escorting bombers over France, German pilots laughed until they tried to shoot one down. You see, the joke was on them, because inside that bulky frame hid one of the most powerful engines of the war. The P-47's turbo-supercharged R2800 could push the plane past 430 miles per hour, making it nearly as fast as Germany's best fighters, especially at high altitudes. It wasn't meant to dance in tight turns. It was built for brutal speed, dive ease, and devastating firepower, and those guns. 8.50 caliber Browning machine guns, 4 in each wing. When a P-47 opened fire, it unleashed more than 100 rounds per second. That's like a wall of lead slicing through the sky. American pilots quickly realized they didn't have to outturn German fighters. They just had to outdive them. The Thunderbolt could drop into a dive faster than almost anything in the air. If things went bad, a quick nose-down plunge would rip it away from danger, while a German fighter trying to follow risked tearing its wings apart. The Luftwaffe had laughed at its size, but soon, that size became its biggest strength. The first time German pilots faced the P-47, they assumed it'd be an easy kill. They went in confident. After all, they'd taken down Spitfires and Mustangs before. But then they noticed something strange. They'd hit the P-47, yet it didn't fall. They'd attack, but the American plane simply rolled, dove away, and vanished into the clouds. One Luftwaffe pilot later wrote in disbelief, "We fired and fired. The jug just kept flying. How could something that big not break?" The Thunderbolt's radial engine and armor made it nearly indestructible. It could take direct hits that would have shredded other planes. Many pilots returned home with holes in their wings, oil leaking, and engines coughing, yet still made it back. Word spread quickly. The fat American wasn't a joke anymore. It was a nightmare that refused to die. But things were only getting started, because the Thunderbolt was about to evolve into something even deadlier. Originally, the P-47 was designed to escort bombers deep into enemy territory. But its massive frame could carry bombs, a lot of bombs. Soon, commanders realized the Thunderbolt wasn't just a fighter, it was a flying sledgehammer. They strapped 500-pound bombs under its wings, added rockets, and sent it hunting trains, tanks, and convoys across Europe. By 1944, German soldiers on the ground had a new name for it, Jawbo, short for Jag Bomber, the fighter bomber that destroyed everything in its path. It could swoop down on a convoy, unleash rockets, strafe with its machine guns, and climb back to altitude before anyone even knew what happened. Its roar became a sound of dread across German front lines. Those who once laughed now ducked for cover when they heard that deep, thunderous growl overhead. But what really broke the Luftwaffe wasn't fear, it was what came next. There's a story from late 1944. A squadron of German pilots took off to intercept a formation of American bombers. They expected the usual, clumsy escorts they could outmaneuver, but that day, the sky looked different. The bombers were surrounded by P-47s flying in perfect formation, gleaming silver in the sunlight. When the Germans dove in, the Thunderbolts didn't scatter, they turned toward the attackers. 8 heavy machine guns opened up in unison, and within seconds, 2 German fighters were gone. One surviving pilot later admitted, "We no longer attacked them. We avoided them." That was the moment the laughter truly died. The Thunderbolt wasn't just another Allied plane, it had become a symbol of unstoppable power. And for the Luftwaffe, that realization hit harder than any bullet. By mid-1944, the Luftwaffe was running out of experienced pilots. Meanwhile, Thunderbolts were everywhere. The Americans could lose one and replace it within days. Germany couldn't. German aces admitted the truth in private diaries. "We underestimated it. It dives faster than anything, and we cannot follow." The very traits they mocked, its size, its weight, its brute power, became its winning formula. At low altitudes, the P-47 shredded trains and tanks. At high altitudes, it escorted B-17s and B-24s safely over Germany. It wasn't the prettiest aircraft, but it was the one that got the job done. One German officer even remarked, "If we had a plane like that, the war might have lasted longer." The laughter was gone, replaced by grudging respect. So why did they laugh in the first place? Simple, they were blinded by appearances. To the Luftwaffe, air combat was about agility, elegance, and engineering precision. The Thunderbolt looked like an insult to that philosophy, but wars aren't won by looks. They're won by endurance, strategy, and power. The P-47 proved that sometimes, the ugliest machine in the sky can be the most effective. Its armor kept pilots alive, its speed made it unpredictable, and its firepower made it feared. The German laughter wasn't just arrogance, it was denial. They couldn't believe something that crude could outfight them. But soon, they learned, underestimating your enemy is the fastest way to lose. By the time the war ended, the P-47 had flown more than 500,000 combat sorties. It destroyed thousands of enemy planes and tens of thousands of ground targets. Its pilots loved it, calling it simply the Jug. To them, the laughter of German pilots was just noise, because in the end, the Jug had the last laugh. Even after the war, historians pointed out how misunderstood the Thunderbolt was. It wasn't built for grace, it was built for survival. And it did that better than almost any other fighter of the war. There's a strange irony here. The Germans laughed at the P-47 because it didn't look dangerous. But what they really mocked was their own ignorance. Every war has its symbols of underestimation, weapons, people, even nations that seem too slow, too clumsy, too odd. The P-47 Thunderbolt became one of those, a machine that turned ridicule into revenge. So the next time you see an old photo of that round, heavy fighter, remember this, it might have looked like a flying barrel. But when it roared through the skies of Europe, nobody was laughing anymore.